Shalom and welcome once again to the Rashi Nosh. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kara.
We are in a brand new book of the Torah, and so our Torah portion is also the name of the new book, which is Bamidbar. In English, this is the book of Numbers, and we are looking at this first Torah portion in our Rashi discussion Torah commentary from the JPS, and we're looking at this very first heading on page 113 called Love Languages. And before we get into it, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to this channel. Like and comment on this video so that the algorithm will pick us up. And please share this on your social media so that as many people as possible can be blessed by our content. So it's interesting that they are mentioning these love languages, this being a Jewish book, and Gary Chapman and his book, The Five Love Languages, being a Christian author. But it says here, in The Five Love Languages, author Gary Chapman asserts that people express feelings of love or affection for one another in five primary ways: spending quality time together, giving gifts, speaking words of affirmation, performing acts of service, and sharing physical touch. In Parashat Bamidbar, which opens with a census of the Jewish people, this provides us with an example of a love language that God uses with the Jewish people. It says there in Numbers, or Bamidbar, chapter 1, verse 1, on the first day of the second month in the second year following the Exodus from the land of Egypt, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting, saying, God instructs the people here to take a census, whose details are described in the subsequent verses. Rashi explains why God wanted to count the Jewish people at this time. He says, on the first day, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. Because they were dear to him, he counted them often. This is what Rashi says in this comment, that since God loves the people, he counts them. Rashi clarifies that God frequently counted the Jewish people as an expression of God's love for them. Gary Chapman's notion of love languages is based on the premise that just as ineffective communication occurs when two people do not speak the same language, so too one's attempt to express caring for another can fail to have the desired impact when two people have different love languages. For example, a person who enjoys receiving gifts may naturally think that giving gifts is the best way to express affection. However, the gift recipient may think that spending quality time together is the ideal way to express affection and may not feel cherished when receiving gifts. By discussing what types of behaviors cause them to feel nurtured, people can feel more fulfilled in their relationships. So here we come to our discussion questions, and so we'll talk about this a bit. Which of the five primary ways to express love identified by Chapman would you most appreciate receiving from a family member? Does your choice change depending on the family member? Do your family members know your preference? If not, how would you feel about telling them? Number two, describe something memorable that a loved one did for you. What would you consider this as being or would you consider this as having been expressed in your love language? And number three, describe a time you gave a gift that reflected significant thought or effort on your part. What inspired you to give this gift to the person? How was it received? So I'll start out. I will think that I express my love language. My expressed love language is, I think, one thing, and then I think the love language that I like receiving might be another thing, or maybe not. Maybe it's close. I like giving little gifts or doing little things. And I like receiving those kinds of things. I always like it if you come home from the grocery store with olives for me, or if you were thinking about me in a certain way, and I have some little thing, some beef jerky or something. I love snacks. So I think my love language is just snacks. But just, receiving little things, even if it's something small, just to know that you thought about me, that's an important thing for me. And I think I like doing that kind of thing. But I think another thing that I like is just quality time, just doing stuff together. And sometimes it doesn't even matter what that activity is that we're doing together, but it's that we're doing something together, whether we're traveling together, whether we're watching a movie together, or whether we're walking through someplace on vacation together, whether we are
Running errands.
running errands together, just being together. I like that. And so I think sometimes there are some similarities, like it expresses here. I like receiving this, and so maybe that's a natural way I will assume that everyone else will like, and so I do that. So I can see some crossover in there, but I also think that sometimes there are differences in how people naturally like to receive that love rather than they like to give that love, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, I tend to be one that if what I like is what I automatically think someone else will want in return, and I have to be conscious and stop and think, okay, that doesn't necessarily translate to every person. We're not speaking the same language. Um, so yes, I know those two things about you. So I try to be very conscious of showing my love to you in those two ways first, um, and and then obviously I do it in other ways too because I tend to be in acts of service um, and lately I think I've shifted over the years. Like sometimes your
Mm.
love language can shift, and I feel like physical touch has become more important to me as I've gotten older. Um, and so I tend to sometimes again want to do things to other people that I assume they want to receive it the same way I do, and so I have to really stop and think about it. But for like different family members, it has to is it depend on the different person. I absolutely do agree that that will shift because I know like from my kids, like because they're so busy and they're this and this and that, and my time is fleeting with them. Like for me, my love language that I would want to receive from them is quality time for the most part. The other things are great, but that's the one I would want the most just because it is, less and less time on the calendar that they're going to be living with us and that I have the opportunity to spend with them and things like that. So I definitely think it depends on the person because I definitely would want to receive things differently from different people for sure.
Yeah, and I think it makes us good love communicators, if you will. It's almost like you have to be multilingual. You can't just assume. Even each of our children are different, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, some of our kids are more physical touch than others. Like there are some of our kids that would like it if you just walked up and give them a hug, and others not. That's not their
Yeah,
love
one
language.
definitely leans more towards words of affirmation.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And that's how they receive love the most. They take it the best when it's
right.
given them to them in that form rather than physical affection or certain other ways.
And so as parents, or just even as friends, as spouses, whatever, even if you're not naturally gifted at giving those words of affirmation, you have a responsibility, I believe, to become good at that if that's the love language that they speak. And so I think that's important. We have this very blatantly explained to us in action, excuse me, when we travel and have to have a translator, have to have an interpreter, where different languages are being used. And if you don't speak the language of the person you're talking to, then there can be confusion. And so, we almost have to be our own interpreters and translators, and we have to speak different love languages with different people. I think that's just part of maturity. And I don't think it's right for us as parents, and I'm talking, I think, probably predominantly to us men now, that if you have a child or your spouse or whatever, that their love language is physical touch, and you just say, "Well, I'm just not a touchy person. I don't hug people. I don't do that. That's not me." I don't think that matters. If that's naturally you, if that's what the other person needs, then that's what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
If words of affirmation are their love language, then you need to become good at doing that, rather than sort of the old way of looking at things. Well, you should know I love you as my child because I put a roof over your head and I pay the bills and whatever. That doesn't translate to the same thing as telling someone that you
Makes me
love
think of
them.
that song Fiddler on the Roof. Do you love me? For
Yes.
45 years I've washed your clothes.
Right. Yeah. That's true, but sometimes
Sometimes you need to hear
that's
it.
how we are. Yeah, we need to be better at that. We need to be better communicators of our love language. So anyway, that's our Torah portion this week for Bamidbar, and maybe we can encourage you to be better at interpreting what the love languages are of your children, of your spouse, of your coworkers, of your parents, whoever,
Apparently of God.
and of God. And maybe it's not a bad idea for you to read this book and or to go online and read up a little bit about it, about these different things. Maybe you've never thought about it before, but it's something that we talk about a lot in marriage counseling because it's an important thing that we're understanding the way that each other operates with regard to love language. So let's do that. Let's make a goal to become better communicators of our love languages. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure for us to be with you, and continue to pray for our students all around the world as we continue to pray for you, and just pray that your family would get to become experts at this. Thank you so much for joining us. Shalom.